Hello, I'm Adrian, and today we're taking an in-depth look at Spider-Man's fighting style in the Spider-Man Trilogy. Previously on How Many Fighting Styles, we took a look at the most recent incarnation of Spider-Man, or in other words, the Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man, which debuted in the film Captain America Civil War. In case you haven't seen that video, you're welcome to by clicking on the card above. What was different about that version of Spider-Man is that we were dealing with a very inexperienced fighter, someone who had been a superhero for only a short period of time. But in this video, we're going to take an in-depth look at the various fighting styles that Spider-Man has exhibited throughout the course of the 3 Sony films that released starting in 2002. Before I begin, I will once again clarify that in the comics, Spider-Man actually develops a martial art of his own called the Way of the Spider. But since we're taking a look at his film incarnation, and we're trying to stick to real martial arts and fighting styles, I'm going to go ahead and not count that in this video as there isn't enough text to truly elaborate what Way of the Spider really is. Returning to the first Spider-Man film, what's pretty awesome about this version of the character is that although he begins as just another inexperienced fighter, by the end of the trilogy he's well versed in all sorts of combat and exhibits pretty exhilarating moves. What should also be mentioned is that what's unique about Peter Parker's situation is that he was naturally gifted with several fighting abilities due to his spider bite, as days after he was bitten he fought Flash and Bonesaw with zero difficulty. As such, without further ado, let's find out how many fighting styles Spider-Man knows in the Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man is incredibly flexible and fast and can contort his body in the air to nimbly avoid projectiles. Whether they be people, or cars, or even Goblin's glider or weapons, Spider-Man is able to constantly dodge any and all incoming objects or people. The closest thing to this in real life would be gymnastics. He's performing the same kind of air-defying moves Olympic athletes do, just to a superheroic degree. If there's anyone that can turn gymnastics into a fighting style, it's Spider-Man. The other integral component to his fighting style is his webbing. Unlike the Marvel Cinematic Universe Spidey, his webbing is organic and does not require the construction of web shooters. Besides the practicality of not having to worry about running out of web cartridges, it gives him an insanely accurate and natural way of incorporating it into his fighting style. For example, he can use them to avoid incoming strikes, web the eyes of his opponent to temporarily blind him, grab a group of enemies at the same time, and can use them as projectile weapons as well. Every single one of these uses requires pinpoint accuracy and precision, and he has it in spades. As such, this version of Spider-Man, like the MCU's, is an incredibly skilled marksman, as he is essentially firing web-based bullets. And the closest thing we can come to that is action shooting, a category within sports shooting which places great emphasis on movement and speed as well as precision. But before you start to think that this Spider-Man is just another version of the MCU's, he's equipped with an incredibly impressive arsenal of traditional fighting styles. Without a doubt, however, his absolute favorite move is the good old punch, contrasting him completely with the MCU Spider-Man, which to this day has never thrown a single punch. A punch can be delivered in a myriad of ways, and depending on how it is delivered, it usually corresponds to a particular style. Boxing is without a doubt the best fighting style suited to punches. The way in which you are taught to punch places great emphasis in torquing your body and twisting your wrist to be able to achieve a maximum amount of power, as demonstrated by Spider-Man when he literally punches Sandman's face off, continually wails on Doc Ock to a degree that this man probably ended up with brain damage, and does the same with plenty of other foes. However, the great thing about having his spider sense is that it gives him the natural ability to bob and weave away from punches with absolutely no effort at all, as he sees things happening to him much slower than we do, giving him all the time in the world to react appropriately. Bobbing and weaving is also integral to boxing, and when you combine that with spider sense, the results are astounding. But there are several other ways of punching besides the traditional hooks, crosses, and uppercuts. You can also execute a Wing Chun Kung Fu style punch by simply extending your arm without the need to twist your hand, sacrificing some power but gaining speed as you require less time to deliver your punch. Spidey uses this in his fight against Flash. After trapping his opponent, and if you want an extended explanation on what trapping is, you can check out How Many Fighting Styles Does Green Arrow Know, and just to make Flash pay for bullying him earlier in the film, he goes and executes his first punch of the film, a traditional Wing Chun punch. Later on, he also applies Kung Fu's concept of deflecting an attack, then responding with a counterattack of your own with one of the thugs who was threatening Mary Jane. And to round off his skill in Kung Fu, he executes a great hit on Venom with a makeshift bow staff. Maintaining this focus on different striking areas available to you in a punch, Spider-Man also uses the back fist. This is different from a traditional punch in that instead of the striking surface being the first 2 knuckles of your hand, the striking surface is the area on top of the knuckles opposite your palm. Several styles incorporate this strike, but the one most commonly associated with it is karate. And continuing with this style, one strike which is particularly effective in self-defense situations is the open-handed throat strike, where you hit your opponent in the throat using the space that is formed formed in your hand when you stretch out your thumb from the rest of your fingers. This strike immediately disables Harry during their tussle in Spider-Man 3. This strike is also commonly associated with several martial arts, but one among them is karate, so I will go ahead and attribute it to karate. But Spider-Man knows that in order to bring more power to your strikes, you need to use your legs, and when you need kicks, the best martial art to turn to is Taekwondo, as it specializes in adding a wide array of practical as well as more theatrical techniques to your fighting arsenal. In his case, he employs the side kick, which although delivered from the floor, retains the same concept of the side kick. The side kick is a powerful kick, where you pull in your leg and extend with as much force as possible, striking with the heel of your foot. He uses another against a thug, although he doesn't get much room to fully extend his leg. He also throws a couple front kicks, and the Captain America mainstay, you already said it before I even did, right? Push kick! That never gets old, huh? Spider-Man also uses some more acrobatic techniques from the style, such as a double split front kick where you raise both your legs at the same time. What makes this Spider-Man different from other incarnations is his reliance on a relatively obscure martial art made more popular by the film The Protector and the video game series Tekken. Capoeira is a Brazilian martial art that actually has a background in dance, but it's deadly because it uses one's whole body as a pendulum. For example, where in Taekwondo for the roundhouse, you lift your leg and snap it as you guys have seen before, in Capoeira you actually swing your entire body to deliver the kick and help yourself out by using a hand to stabilize yourself in the floor, and it's called a martelo de negativa. Having seen that, look at how Spider-Man thrusts his whole body behind his kick and uses his hand to stabilize himself. A textbook martelo de negativa. Spidey also uses the same concept of using his whole body to execute a move during this sweep kick, infusing both capoeira and his Spidey strength into one awesome move. Spidey also applies the same judo concept that so many superheroes before him have used, in that you want to use your enemy's strength against them. In this case, he deflects the opponent rushing towards him by flipping him over with a well-placed kick, an actual judo technique. He also uses a concept of countering the enemy's strength and then redirecting it, both when throwing this thug right here and even to counter Harry's tackle. As such, it's safe to assume Spider-Man is innately familiar with judo as well. Revisiting that throat strike, it's actually fairly common to strike that area in Krav Maga, as in Krav Maga there's a strong emphasis in targeting the weak points of the body, including the throat. However, I bring this fighting style up because there's one moment that happens in the film in particular that leads me to believe Spidey has innately learned concepts from it, the disarm that happens right here. Not only is it a very quick and non-flashy disarm, he actually goes so far as to twist the man's wrist so much that he breaks it, something that is readily taught in several Krav Maga disarms. One martial art which I was both surprised and excited to see Spider-Man demonstrate elements of is Muay Thai. Elbows and knees are absolutely critical to Muay Thai, and they are part of what is known as the art of 8 limbs, since you also use them in your fighting arsenal besides your traditional punches and kicks. In Spider-Man's case, he uses reverse elbows to get out of situations where he doesn't have enough room, and even goes so far as to use his webbing to add extra oomph to a devastating knee strike, and in a blink and you miss it moment, he grabs Sandman's head and drives his knee into it as he is falling down with him before he web zips to safety. Spider-Man also employs perhaps one of the easiest to execute and most lethal holds available, the rear naked choke. He doesn't get enough time to completely wrap his arms around the neck, but you can tell Doc Ock is in pain. This chokehold is attributed to several different martial arts, but since one of the best martial arts dedicated to grappling techniques is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I will attribute it to that one. But sometimes Spidey shows off a little bit of his theatrical side, and that's when we see professional wrestling techniques thrown into the mix. He's fond of grabbing his opponent's head and slamming it into objects, either glass or an incoming train depending on how angry he is, executing a drop kick, but with the added bonus of being able to swing into it, creating the pendulum kick, and uses it several times throughout the trilogy. So in conclusion, how many fighting styles does Spider-Man know? They are gymnastics, action shooting, boxing, Wing Chun, karate, Taekwondo, Capoeira, Judo, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and professional wrestling, which brings us to the grand total of 12 fighting styles. What other character would you like to see me break down in terms of his fighting style? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe, and you can follow me on my Twitter, Instagram, and brand new Facebook fan page, Godzilla Rex, to be notified when another new episode premieres. It would also be great if you could join my Patreon to get access to cool behind the scenes stuff and a bunch of other rewards. See you next time.